We're talking now about sustainable cities, increasing efficiency and transforming design. And again, I'd like to get your remarks, your thoughts, your comments, your questions, anything, just keep filing them to me. But what I've asked is for each of the panelists to give us their impression and their analysis, maximum of 5 minutes, I've said very clearly, to where things are, where things are going, and what the opportunities are. What is the role of the private sector in adapting and innovating solutions for urban areas? Which technologies and approaches are currently being adopted? And what about leveraging municipal investment streams to create viable business opportunities? So that's where we are at the moment. Let me now, first of all, I think if I can I go to Niels Christiansen first, actually, because I'd like to come to you as Chief Executive Officer of Danfoss. You're in the business now of trying to create significant leap forward in many of these issues.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, and stating that actually comes out of that we believe that a lot of the technologies that we actually need going forward, they are available. Of course, we'll bring new products, new innovations every day, but there are a lot of solutions available today. That actually gives quite a bit of reason for optimism. On the other hand, I think we see some of the uptake of those technologies being too slow. And what I hope coming out of this is really that an agreement and a stronger push on the overall direction or strategy for where to go will allow cities and businesses to get closer together, to get into execution mode. Because it's nice to have governments put out the big direction, but reality really is that somebody makes projects, somebody endorses projects and actually make them go live. And that I think we've seen too little of in the last period. It's clear that energy efficiency should be very high on the agenda here, and the International Energy Agency is talking about that. To get to the 2% increase in temperature, 38% of that should come from energy efficiency. And I think a lot of focus has been on renewables and how to do that, but we should not forget the huge opportunity, often actually with shorter payback times, that comes out of energy efficient solution. Let me just mention a few, like if you take Copenhagen, Denmark, 98% of the energy, the heat energy distributed to all the inhabitants of Copenhagen is done by district energy. District energy is by far the most efficient way of distributing heat. That's a huge opportunity. If all the potential for district energy in the world was actually made, that would make up for 58% of what we need to get to the 2%. 58%. That's just on one technology called district energy. Now that's in Copenhagen or in developed countries, but in countries like China, there are cities in China where the pollution is so bad that you can hardly breathe there. In those countries, we have an example in the northern part of China, a city called Anshan, where the entire heat need of a city of 4 million people can be taken off waste heat from one single steel factory. So there are amazing opportunities with reasonably good paybacks that can actually be pulled off. And I could give an example of district cooling in India or smart cities in Russia working around those topics. So they're actually there. We also need to think about it when we build new buildings. That often we see these high-rise come up with very glossy windows. They look very, very nice, but the inside is often not up to speed. It's a little bit like ordering a Tesla with a diesel engine in it. And there's a huge opportunity for us to actually go inside the building, making sure that everything from the heating, cooling systems to the facades to the way we operate fans and motors and elevators is done in an energy efficient way. And the opportunity is much greater than we think. But also going to every one of us in our private homes, just in Europe, there are 550 million radiators not being controlled in the optimal fashion, not even having a radiator thermostat on it, having an old manual on-off valve. The opportunity of just putting on an average or even an advanced radiator thermostat is taking between 25 and 40% of the energy out of that. So lots of things we can do, lots of things that are actually economically practical and attractive. We need now, I think, coming out of this, to get more speed on implementation, on getting these available technologies taken into play. And that's where business and cities come together.
Niels, one quick question, if I may. Is this coming from push from you or from business, or is it coming from pull from the consumers?
It's a great question. I think if I look back over the last 3 to 5 years, it's been it's been 80 or 90% push and 10 to 20% pull. I feel it's tipping right now. And I feel also this week that we've seen more mayors come out there and say, okay, this is really interesting. We need something like this. So my hope at least is that the pull will get stronger.
All right, well, let's now go to a developing nation, to one of the G20 as well, Mexico, to Hidalgo, to the state of Hidalgo, to Jose Pablo Muad Ponton, Minister for Economic Development from Hidalgo. I've been to your state, and I can see the difference between the developed cities and the challenges you're facing. How are you tackling this in terms of the way ahead and the opportunities? I'm going to go business, state, government, business, and then government, then a company again. So we'll divide it that way. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nick. The state I come from is in central Mexico, and it is the main recipient of growth from the large urban area of Mexico City. We are located just north of Mexico City, and our challenge in Hidalgo has been for many years to face this development that, if left unchecked, will tend to be disorderly and very unsustainable, and how to do it in a manner that we create the conditions and the new urban developments that foster sustainable quality and allow us to face the future with a higher standard of living for the people who will be inhabiting this area. Now let's remember that Mexico City, the larger area of Mexico City, hosts about 25 million inhabitants, and it is a scary thing to be receiving most of that growth when you are a smaller state in central Mexico. So the question has been addressed in two ways. First, using the high industrial competitiveness that this poses and allowing for the growth of new jobs creation, of installment of new companies, growth of the existing companies, but all within a very strict urban development and emissions policy, so that everything new that we develop is under very careful long-term vision planning and allows for our industries to be using cleaner sources of energy, mostly gas, a lot of green energy as well. And the city's development are using new transportation technologies. Our capital city, called Pachuca, has now put into place just this year a new BRT system that has taken off the streets over 1,000 smaller, older vehicles in exchange of only 83 new high-standard, low-emission vehicles that have modernized transport within the city. The challenge overall has been to link this new generation industrial development to what we see as the future of economic growth for the state of Hidalgo and particularly the capital city of Pachuca in an innovation-based economy. We have seen many regions and areas around the world walk the path from a basic economy to an industrialized one to an innovation-based economy. And Pachuca has always been a city from its beginning that has attracted a lot of university students, and more universities have been developing in our town. And this has allowed us to bring in also innovation centers to start funneling and directing every liaison and every opportunity of education into sustainable economic development. And the whole idea started from a relatively simple concept of creating new jobs through more education activities, and has evolved into a much more complex issue of the highest leadership in the state. The governor personally has made it his mission to foster the growth of Hidalgo's economy into a knowledge-based economy. In just 5 years that this administration has gone through, this very serious project has allowed us to materialize a $200 million investment in a new city of knowledge and culture, which has been planned and urbanized with all the highest standards of sustainability and development, and has allowed us to position Hidalgo as a new industrial and innovation hub in Mexico. Therefore, the name of this meeting, Sustainable Innovation, is exactly at the heart of what we are doing, transforming an economy that originated in mining and has developed into very strong industrial competitiveness conditions and is looking towards the future, towards an innovation-based economy.
Again, that same question about what about the push from below, the expectations now, the push for you to deliver, as opposed to you doing it prescriptively?
It has been a push from the governor's leadership. He has taken this initiative personally and has made it his mission to make it known to society. What we are expecting is to see this leadership transferred to society.
But does society understand what increasing efficiency and transforming design it really means to them?
They are starting to understand it more. It started from the leadership. It started from the top down. Now we're trying to make it also a very large and thorough awareness from the academic, private sectors, so that they start demanding that their governments, not only the state government, but also municipal governments and federal governments in general, make sure that this development is carried out in this way.
And is that creating a multiplier effect?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, let's pause for a moment. Let's go to Taiwan, to Yancy Hai, chairman of Delta Electronics, and just explain to us, Yancy, what you produce in Delta Electronics.
Okay, good morning. I'm very excited to be here at this historical event. So hopefully, this meeting will change the future of the Earth. And Delta, we are a $7 billion company. The major products are the power supplies. If you don't know what power supplies are, there's a 50% chance that your notebook is using the adapter made by us. Also, if you have a data center, there's 50% chance that your server is powered by our power supplies. And also, everybody is using the cell phone, and we provide about 30% of the power to the base stations. So basically, a lot of people don't know our company, but we are inside, in most of the devices. So basically, it's Delta inside. And the Delta, we have a mission statement, that's to provide clean, innovative, and energy efficient solutions for a better tomorrow. So the new product development, all the R&Ds for the new product, now they are all centered around this mission statement. For example, we are getting into the solar power inverter business. Now we have one of the highest efficient solar inverter in the industry. That's 98.7%. And a few years ago, it was 98.5%. So we are increasing. Because we produce so many power supplies. If a 1% increase in efficiencies, it's going to make a whole lot of difference. So we make a calculation from 2010 to 2014, to last year. Because of our engineers' effort to increase the efficiencies of the power supplies. By the way, we make small and big, about 200 million pieces of power supplies a year. So the efficiencies we derived from the new R&D efforts in the past 5 years. Okay? We have saved the world 150 billion tons of, kilowatts of electricity. And also, if you translate that into CO2, it's about 8 million tons of CO2. So now we have the powers but also we are getting into some other areas. Okay? And the goal also is to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. Now we are talking to Norway government to produce the charging stations for the EVs. By the way, a lot of people don't know that Norway, they have the second largest Tesla fleet in Norway, because the Norwegian government is pushing very hard to have a clean environment. And we are going to build about 380 charging stations in Norway. And inside Delta, also we have set up a goal to reduce the power consumption. So in 2010, we set up a goal is to reduce 50% of the electricity intensity for the next 5 years. That's from 2010 to 2014. At the beginning, all the factory managers, they say, wow, how are we going to do that? But we can do that, one project by another. And I'm proud to announce here, up to last year, the electricity we used per $1 million of merchandise we produced has decreased from 83,000 kilowatt hours to 42,000 kilowatt hours. So it's about 50%. But the project did not end there. So the new commitment is sort of like NDC for the countries. It's to reduce another 30%. This time it's not 50% anymore. This time it's 30% for the next 3 years. But this time it's going to not only including the factories, but also including the offices and the data centers. Finally, starting from 2006, we have built 21 green buildings. All our buildings since 2006, they're all green buildings. The latest one is the one we have in Silicon Valley, California. We opened that building in October. The building is going to get the LEED Platinum rating. And also, that building is going to be the first net zero building in that area. So for the 21 buildings we have built, we have made a model, and we have going to make an exhibition. So if you have time, you can go to Grand Palace, near Champs-Élysées. You can see our exhibition there. So everybody is welcome. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. But again, a critical question is, what is driving this? Is it your push for efficiency, or is it what the customer is expecting or what your competitors are doing?
Okay, first, it's from us. Okay, actually, our founder, his name is Bruce Chen. He got this idea in the 70s. It's not recently. In the 1970s, when he first started the company. Okay, that's the first oil crisis. He thought that the natural resources is going to be used up sooner or later. Whether it is 50 years or 100 years or 200 years, it's going to be used up. So he got the idea, say, hey, we need to save the natural resources. At the time, we don't have this climate change or greenhouse gas emission problem yet, but it's the natural resource conservation.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Portugal now. And there's one question here which is really applicable to all of you, but from Rodel Omatan from Copenhagen. How do you convince governments to prepare and upgrade their infrastructure system to push cities to embrace sustainability? Now, that's not directed at you, Manuel, but there's a principle there of how do you convince governments to prepare and upgrade?
Thank you very much, Nick, and also for the question. But let me answer that from a complementary perspective. I would like very much to raise your attention for what I will call a woman-centered perspective. And this is because the context of sustainable innovation, to go beyond the commonplace, do need to be understood in a context of increased uncertainty. Uncertainty in the markets and uncertainty certainly in technical change. And to deal with that, the idea that we can either bring governments, but more than that, population at general, is to really believe that knowledge is our common future and essentially believe on the building up of knowledge-based societies. And therefore, the key question I would like to bring to you, how can we use technology to leverage citizens' expertise and to promote a dynamic of learning? And that will require, in my view, clearly understanding to move from what has been over the last decade essentially of top-down policies without no city engagement and not a lot of innovation in policy making, but essentially looking at the way large firms in a very successful way have exploited new technologies to new ways of first participating in city management, but also look at the future beyond city management and essentially to bring what I will call co-creation policies, taking the city as a platform for open science and innovation, which certainly do require participatory agenda settings, but also ways to foster creativity. And actually, to answer to your previous questions, certainly we need the supply of ideas, we need the demand of ideas, but I will try to convey your attention that beyond that, we also need what I will call middle-out strategies and policies, essentially coming from intermediary institutions and a range of, say, public-private partnerships, which do certainly better understand the opportunities for new technologies, new ideas, but can also convey solutions which are sustainable in the middle and long term by looking at risks. In the exhibition outside, you have some of those technologies, certainly from a Portuguese institution, which is the result of an attempt to making also Portugal a place of science, technology, and knowledge. And essentially, I will call, for example, two main applications. One in Brazil, in the city of Curitiba, which by addressing electric mobility in a way to convey the public engagement, essentially through public fleets at the urban level, and more recently, the way to address electric mobility as a way to turn modernity inclusive of all communities, including those in the most vulnerable parts of the city of Rio de Janeiro. But also in the city of Maputo, in Mozambique, we have tried to use mobile communications to involve the population at waste management processes, and at a later stage by bringing research communities to really convey sustainable innovation through a better understanding of urban metabolism. This will certainly require new and enlarged participatory processes of citizens at large by bringing them together with experts, with researchers, but also with institutions which are able to speak the different languages of the research communities and of the citizens at large. So beyond the traditional approaches of just say trying to convey top-down technologies, which will certainly be interesting and will continue to be interesting, we need to better understand sustainable innovation by a bottom-up approach and essentially in an institutional framework which will allow us to create new institutions to foster innovation in the years to come.
Manuel, thank you. Jake, can you just pause for a moment? I just want to ask the two representatives of government, again, that question from Copenhagen, from Rodel Ometan. How do you convince governments to prepare and upgrade their infrastructure systems to push cities to embrace sustainability? Because what you're saying is bottom up. Are you both feeling significant digital empowerment, which is pushing you? It's the same question as I asked to Niels about business and also to Delta, about who is pushing this. Are you feeling greater push now and expectations from the public digitally?
We are, and the way that I see of convincing governments to take more action is through social action, both in the more general and maybe passive way in which society demands and expects and shows through democracy.
Are you talking about social digital action as much as anything? It doesn't mean going on the streets.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not referring to going on the streets. I'm referring to letting governments know and letting leadership in government know what society is expecting, not only for the immediate term, but also in terms of planning for the future. And social media, of course, and many other tools allow direct communication, and we do see a lot more impact and a lot of more communication from the general public towards us in what they're expecting, certainly.
And the same for you, Manuel. Are you feeling that pressure, even with all the economic problems at the moment?
Certainly yes, and the message I would convey here is certainly one of strengthening participatory democratic processes to foster people's knowledge and people know-how. But certainly when we look at developing countries, and I believe it is our obligation to look at that, we need to understand that education is also a critical way, because we are in Paris, and well-known French philosopher have told us many years ago that information, it is not knowledge. And in order to pass from an information society to one which really creates sustainable innovation, we need to educate our population so that they can really participate in processes which will foster the diffusion of knowledge. So it is, I believe, our duty in developed countries to look at the development stages of many of the others so that we can involve all in this process. And this is not anymore a commonplace. This is our obligation to better understand how technology can be used by everyone at low prices and that a way that really can decrease economic inequality throughout society. That is certainly a sustainable innovation platform.
Thanks for the moment. Yeah, Jake Lays, Director, Global Clean Tech and Entrepreneur Impact at Autodesk. Your view?
Yeah, so I have, I basically want to start with this. First of all, it's important to recognize that we moved from why should we care about this to how are we going to deal with this? Because climate change is a complex systemic issue that requires all of us to work together. It requires innovation and collaboration and creativity to work towards a future where we can all live well and within the means of this planet. And the cities really feel most of this very clearly, because as we move to 10 billion people by 2050, the majority of us will be in a city. 95% of us will live within a day's drive of a city. You combine this with the increase of a global middle class, you have tremendous strain and demand on energy, on water, on natural resources and infrastructure. And the cities are the ones who really have to care for this the most, because their interest is to deliver a healthy standard of living. Right? So the question is, how do you get to a 10 billion world, 10 billion people world, where everybody lives well and lives within the means of this planet? We believe it is through smart design solutions, smart climate solutions, through the power of design. Autodesk sits at the nexus of the design community. Essentially, if you drive a car, use a mobile phone, Autodesk products has been used to make, or is being used basically to build our built environment. The buildings we live in, the infrastructure we use, the tallest skyscrapers we work in. Also, if you remember the last time you went to a Pixar movie with your son or with your daughter, you've seen Autodesk software in action there as well in the entertainment industry. But going back to how design can actually make a difference, we have the science, the tools, and the knowledge in place to design a sustainable future. Designers and architects and engineers can design energy efficient buildings and infrastructure. They can design cities that absorb carbon. They can design transportation system that is independent of fossil fuel. They can design buildings and net zero cities that create more energy than they consume. So it is possible. So the question is, how are you going to go and get this forward? There's a couple of examples. So 2 examples I'd like to mention. One on a very large scale, you look at a building like the Shanghai Tower, which is the largest structure in Shanghai, using simulation analysis tools, able to reduce the wind load on this building. There's a lot of typhoons in Shanghai. But at the same time, also reduce materials being used. Huge savings in costs, ongoing energy savings by 20%, ongoing water savings because of the collection of rainwater by 40%. This is on a large scale. If you look on the small scale, what I'm particularly passionate and really excited about is if you look at the entrepreneurs who step up to the plate, step up to the challenge of delivering and designing and innovating promising, scalable solutions that capture and mitigate and reverse some of the climate change. We have 3 companies here in the stand. Feel free to go and visit them. One called Flotility. They do an e-scooter that covers the last mile, which is very important in cities. Then Agrilution, which is a company that does vertical farming, bringing back the farming into the home and doing a tremendous change and as well as savings there. And Breeze, a company that has sensors that measure your air pollution in your vicinity, connect us with your mobile phone. What I find really interesting is the accessibility to technology and funding has changed tremendously, has become a lot easier. And there is a generation of entrepreneurs who are looking at this as an opportunity to build businesses and make something really useful and valuable for the world. It excites me the most, and I'm happy that we can support them. We have a program in place called the Autodesk Entrepreneur Impact Program, and we give startups and and entrepreneurs who qualify up to $150,000 worth of software free of charge in order to come up with climate solutions that make a difference.
I think we should all be using Flotility to get around Paris, actually, including around the Stade. Maybe we could have a race at lunchtime.
Check out the scooter over there. Yes.
Yeah, indeed. I'm impressed. Can I encourage you with more questions, please? I've got a lot here, but I'd like to hear more because we've got a bit of time to run. But can I just push you even harder on that thing about stepping up to the plate? What is it about business people who actually get to the edge of the plate and then look over the rim into the plate? What makes them cross that rim of the plate so they can step up to it?
Well, there's a couple of things that can happen either. So we are B2B, right? We are business to business. So it either happens through the customers of our customers who ask for solutions, who ask for greener cars, greener buildings, better living environments. That is sort of the push on one side that we see. We also see, I mentioned entrepreneurs, you look into various areas outside of Europe and North America, in Asia, Africa, or in Latin America, where people see the social and environmental challenges and then try to make that step. For companies of very large size, it is a combination of what the consumer wants, what the users of the product want, as well as what policies require of them to do. And it's a combination of both that will push you over that edge. And if you are looking into climate change specifically and sustainability, I think there's an opportunity to be the disruptor, because if you're not, the chances are that you will be disrupted.
Great, okay, thank you. Is Edward Craig in here somewhere? I can't see everyone here. Yeah, right at the back. Could we mobilize a microphone to get to you, Edward? Because I'll come to you in a moment, but the microphone may take a little time. Put your hand up, get the microphone to Edward, please. There he is. Match microphone with hand, please. There. Could someone... Good. Okay, Paula, could you make sure he has a microphone? Let me ask you a couple of specific questions. First of all, there's a comment here from Axel Strang. How do we make sure that citizens reach the maturity level to always vote for politicians acting in the long term towards sustainable cities? Do any of you have an idea on that, or do you want to keep quiet?
I don't want to keep quiet. That has been addressed in many places through more education and knowledge, and that is the way I really convey the message of the city as a co-creation platform, essentially looking at particular issues of open science and innovation, and that does require educated people, and therefore all the public engagement in promoting education is a critical issue. It has been in the past, and it will be in the future.
And Niels, your experience in Denmark, you've just had an expression of public opinion in a kind of referendum. But what's your view on this about citizens, it's his question, reaching the maturity level to always vote for politicians acting in the long term on sustainability?
I think I would offer that part of the solution is probably part of the solution also for the first question you asked, how do we get cities more inclined? And I think the value of actually being able to demonstrate real life what happens, I think is important. First of all, for cities to be able to go in and say, I would like to have one like this. I would like to do something similar to this. But I also think those stories can actually be communicated. So the broader public can understand this is actually possible. In Denmark, for instance, there is a city called Aarhus. They have a wastewater plant. Like every city basically have wastewater plants around. It takes up between 25 and 30% of the energy used in the city. Now in Aarhus, what they did, they actually made this wastewater plant an energy producing plant. So it produces 90% more energy than it takes. Now that's something that now Chicago has come and said, okay, we would like to have one of those, to try it out. I'm pretty sure if Chicago gets one in the US and it gets known that it's there, then there will be people around the US starting to vote for politicians that have the same type of vision. So I think that's the way to go. The only disadvantage is it will take a bit of time.
Yancy Hai, you come from Taiwan. Do you think there are votes in sustainability in Taiwan?
Well, I cannot comment on this.
Why not? Why not?
Because the situation there, especially the political situation there, is pretty messy.
But could it be less messy if people vote for sustainability?
Yeah, and I think the voters, they are with the short-term view, and they don't look at beyond, say, a few years. And also the politicians, they just want to have the vote. They will give out a lot of short-term rain checks, so people got sort of poisoned or spoiled.
Okay. Right, Edward, you're right at the back, and it shows that I can see people right at the back. And the reason I've asked you if you can contribute, we can just about see you, is your point you made of if all the technology is available, what's stopping the implementation? You're head of innovation and enterprise at ECCI.
Yes, indeed, I am. I don't know if this is on just
We
now.
can hear you, yeah.
It is, yeah. We've been working for over 5 years trying to build pathways and gateways across the world. We've opened a new office in Hong Kong, in New York, and other parts of the world, trying to access the best ideas, to try to access technology, because what we're finding is that these solutions are all across the world, and we're very, very keen for these ideas to be brought across into our local situations, to be implemented where we can. And we're finding the barriers are soft barriers, they're policy barriers, they're people barriers, where in effect they're stuck in their own existing processes. And I was wondering what the panel was thinking about. I totally agree with the point made that the technology is already there to provide a large portion of the solutions out there. So how can we move aside these existing barriers to accelerate the impact and accelerate the solutions that we're looking for? We're certainly working on it, but we would be delighted to hear from any partners there. And we have a few ideas as well of our own.
But Edward, just while you've got the microphone, this question of the bottom-up pressure from the voters in most countries, do you see that changing significantly? In other words, the bottom-up push, the expectation now.
I think there certainly is a step change. When we started at the university, the Edinburgh Centre 5 years ago, there was a lot of quizzical looks and a lot of people saying, well, why are you even bothering from this process? So I think not only the interest this conference has created, but also there is a momentum towards that. But just moving back briefly to the question, and challenge really to the corporates in the room here, that you have massive international networks and supply chains around the world. Why are you not engaging more deeply with small and medium-sized enterprises, with individuals with innovative products and services, and then using them and bringing them into your networks, and then allowing that implementation to go global much more easily than they could ever dream to? And that would be one of the mechanisms of trying to help these fantastic low-carbon solutions to be implemented more effectively in a global aspect.
Engaging more in SMEs, Niels.
Yeah.
In other words, you're missing an opportunity. Maybe not you, but an opportunity is being missed. Thank you.
I must say, I think the proposal here is a great one. And when I'm sitting down thinking about this, it really is about getting more cooperation between cities and companies, but it's not individual companies. It is almost always groups of companies. It's very.
How do you define a group?
Yeah, when we talk about the wastewater plant, or we talk about a skyscraper being built, it's not one company coming with the technologies. Often we would work together with 5 or 6 different companies, bringing other technologies that would be needed. And I think to the point of what was being said here is really that could easily be a combination of big global companies and smaller companies, more regional players in that. And yes, I agree. I think we need to be better at that, and that is one of the ways.
Jake, you're nodding your head. And could I get a microphone to Town Rock Energy? I don't know who you are, but could you put your hand up, please? Okay, over here. Microphone here, please. But what do you think, Jake? You were nodding.
Yeah, so the reason why I was nodding is because I think there is still a lot more that companies can do. I did mention of what we are doing, so we are seeking out entrepreneurs and individuals. We also support non-profits. We have an Autodesk Foundation that is the first of its kind that supports those groups that use design to overcome challenges. So there is overall what I see quite a trend where you see incubators and accelerators looking into this. So if you look really at the very bottom level of really micro businesses, there are more and more opportunities coming up, and it is an opportunity for corporate to work with these places, with makerspaces.
Do you think they see those opportunities?
Not everybody sees it yet, but as I said earlier, you either want to be the disruptor or be disrupted, and when you go to makerspaces or incubators, you find those that potentially could disrupt your business. And so I think you want to go and be engaging, and that's why I was nodding my head, because very often all these projects are multi-party projects. It's not a single company that can overcome climate change or a specific project these days. And so I think the need to collaboration is important.
The kind of questions are coming in, and if you've just arrived and you don't know what I'm talking about, the question is in the top left-hand corner of the screen or on the app as well. So we're picking up both, and that's how I'm reflecting what you're thinking and identifying people in the audience. A comment here, a question about the role emerging IoT technologies will play in creating sustainable city infrastructures. That from Eric Dresselhuys, who's an EVP and co-founder of Silver Spring Networks. But bear that in mind as I push it further forward, because about energy efficiency. And Angela Ye is asking, what is the private sector's role in promoting that, and especially in the building sector, where energy consumption is over 1/3 of global energy. Particularly a question for Delta Electronics about energy efficiency, about how you generate even greater energy efficiency now, given the urgency.
The improvement for efficiencies, a lot of people thought there's a limit, and for me, in my own view, there's no limitation. Okay, a few weeks ago, I heard the best quotation. That's from Hank Paulson. He's the ex-treasurer in the United States, and then now he's in the environmental work, together with China. Okay, because China's pollution problem is really serious, and he said, the cleanest energy is the energy you don't use. It's not the solar, it's not the wind, it's not the biomass. It's the cleanest energy is the energy you don't use. So there's a lot of ways to save energy or don't use it. For example, in our factory, we used to have this so-called the burn-in process. That's the process you test your power supply, and you put into the oven, and then you hook on the electricity, and then it burn 8 hours, 10 hours, and so on and so forth. And then in the past, all this burning process, they use a lot of electricity, and also they produce a lot of heat. Then later on, one of our engineers, he said, hey, the energy, the electricity actually can be recycled. Okay? You have an AC power in, and then you convert to DC, and then in the past, the DC has to go through a resistor, and then they produce heat. But right now we put an inverter after the DC, and then DC became AC and then come back. So it's a simple process. You just put something there. You can reduce the electricity consumption by 85%.
All right, Jake, do you want to come in quickly? Then I'll go to Town.
Yes, yeah. I just wanted to mention, because it was building space, the WRI, I think, said that 50% of the buildings of today will be still around by 2050. So if we do want to reduce our efficiencies, we have to look into retrofitting. What you can do is you can take pictures of a building, satellite images, and local data, climate data, create a conceptual model of that building, and then analyze it for where you want to go and do energy efficiency. So they've done this in Washington, D.C. and found that you can, for example, do the glazing of the windows, double glazing. You can target this as a way of getting the biggest energy efficiency benefits out of this. And so that is possible, and this will be necessary in the building industry as well.
All right, let me go to Town Rock, and maybe you could identify yourself, please, because you've been asking about persuading communities on a natural gas grid to install district heating infrastructure. Tell us why you're asking that question.
Yes, David Townsend from Town Rock Energy. We are facilitating large district heating network projects in Scotland that utilize geothermal energy for most of their heat supply because it's the lowest carbon form of heat. I'm really happy that actually Twittering paid off, because I'm a bit of a Twitter skeptic, so thanks for calling on me. My question is,
I want you to make best use of your time.
So anyway, massive advocate of geothermal energy and district heating, and recently visited Copenhagen actually 2 weeks ago. And so I've got a question for the panel, but probably mostly for Niels. And just before I ask it, I want to congratulate you on your very useful website for sizing pumps. We've used it extensively. But the question is around why in Scotland, everybody is on the natural gas grid and they have heat, and most people can afford that. So it's all well and good selling the idea of district heating to governments who are fairly enthusiastic for supporting it, but the end consumer needs to understand the benefits as well. And how do you suggest we get them on board with that quickly, because it needs to happen soon?
And just before you answer that, another tweet just in about how do you incentivize or promote energy efficiency for households, industry, or cities when hard to track what you are not doing? No name there, but you've got the gist. Niels.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the comments. I'm smiling because I'm actually myself living in an area where exactly what you're saying is relevant. We have now gas and district heating. And I think basically, fundamentally, I believe in market forces to actually work. So it needs to be worthwhile also for the individual. And that means that you want to make sure that because district energy is a more efficient way, the benefits must also come to the end user. That's the only way to drive it. And I think the economics are there. So it's about laying them out and getting that right. And I think most of the gas distribution systems are by now 30, 40 years old. So they're probably due for maintenance anyway. So I think that is the way to go about that.
But quite apart from the Scottish challenge of old pipes, again, this is from Gina Patterson, I'm repeating it. How do you incentivize or promote energy efficiency for households, industries, or cities when it's hard to track what you are not doing?
I think it's a key question. I was actually, a year ago, I was chairing it. The Danish government put down a panel for climate and energy. We worked for a year on stuff like this, and it's quite interesting that most of us, we have mortgages in our houses. We pay the mortgage, that's part of the cost of living in a house. But we don't think about that the heat bill in many occasions are very similar or comparable to the mortgage. So if you can halve your heat bill, you can actually live for the same amount of money in a much greater house or a much better house. So we're trying to put, I would say, you're trying to put in principles that actually would make the heat bill part of the valuation of the house and try to certify that. I think those are the lines along which ones need to think to make it worthwhile for the end user.
Sort of energy equivalent of quantitative easing and the effect on mortgage costs.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the total cost of living. Yeah. Mortgage is one of it, but heating is the other one.
I've got some other questions for cities and so on, but any other points about this? How do you incentivize for energy efficiency? Jake or anyone else? Please, Manuel.
Just to make an additional comment. From research and emerging research in the last decade, we clearly note today that to address new horizons for energy efficiency in the years to come, we need to look at the process of changing the behavior of individuals and their collective action. And changing behaviors do require a complex process of, say, what I will call collective learning. How can we help people better understanding issues of energy efficiency? So traditionally, this has been addressed essentially by supplying new technologies, by imposing regulatory issues essentially through taxes, and those processes will continue, certainly. But we need to go beyond those traditional tools and essentially looking at the behavioral nature of energy efficiency, which is affecting most of our limits of current, essentially, city energy levels.
Because I'll just stay on efficiency before these other points coming up, and we're going to run for another 15 minutes so Helen Clark can get here to talk to us about UNDP. For some devices, usage increases as efficiency goes up, nullifying the benefits. Aren't other incentives now required to prevent this? You're nodding, Manuel.
That is very much
incentives.
Yeah, keeping to my point, you need incentives to also help changing the way people live in cities, not only applying taxes, and that do certainly convey a constructive and positive message.
Right. Well, stop there one moment, because actually there are several questions for you in public service about how you create incentives, picking up on exactly that point. Do your respective governments have local and national incentives for inventors and innovators? If yes, what are these incentives? There's no name attached to that, certainly on this grid. And secondly, from Catherine Cunningham, what are visionary cities doing to effectively incentivize entrepreneurs to innovate?
I will call again to participatory processes at large by engaging citizens and essentially consider that public decision-making could be more effective and legitimate if our institutions know how to use technology to leverage citizens' expertise and promote a dynamic of learning. Certainly there are a number of cities worldwide which are experimenting processes of, say, participatory democracy, which will become one way to convey the attention of people, certainly for new technical solutions, but also how can we use them in a better way. And certainly this co-creation of bringing different stakeholders in a process which certainly the demand is clearly, the supply of new ideas is particularly important, but the co-creation of new ideas which do require an institutional framework, essentially through public-private partnerships and a range of intermediary institutions which will play a critical role in the years to come, I believe.
Jose Pablo, could I just find out where Nicolas Marnier is, please? Where are you? Is a hand going up there? Could we get the microphone there? Because you make a very interesting point. The microphone, please, at the front. We're halfway. Could you get the microphone, please? Le micro ici. Anyway, it'll arrive. Jose Pablo, your answer to this about innovation, encouraging visionary cities. How do you incentivize entrepreneurs to innovate in cities?
Well, Hidalgo has made a decision to incentivize, promote, to actually build a knowledge-based economy. And this has many factors going into it. One of them is building the actual infrastructure, science and technology parks, and the City of Knowledge and Culture itself. The other one is attracting installations such as the National Laboratory for Sustainability Sciences and another National Innovation Center for Agro-Biotechnology. And then doing a very active promotion, social promotion, in order to achieve this psychological community change that is needed for society to deem itself a knowledge-based society. And the core of it all is doing a very active incentive program and helping out innovative entrepreneurship programs. So what we have is buildings full of incubators, business accelerators, liaison with universities and larger companies, so that entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors can have very open spaces to work and do the research projects, shared research, lab facilities, scholarships of all kinds for local and also overseas studies, and just doing a very intense attraction, promotion, and fostering. And all of these programs, there are tens of different initiatives, are direct incentives towards innovation and knowledge-based cities development.
Jake, do you see enough incentive to step up to the plate in the way that Jose Pablo has just described?
Well, so it depends a little bit from country to country. In some places you see quite a lot support for entrepreneurs and startups to step up, as I said earlier, and in others it's less so. So it's generally, I think worldwide, I think there could be more done. And I believe also the private sector has a role to play. We all know things, and we can pass on that knowledge to students, to universities, work with universities particular. For example, you can make materials online available. We have a program where we teach sustainable design to students, and they can see that through our channels. So there's an opportunity, I think, also for private sector to be sort of a part of this as well.
Right. Nicolas Magnier, you are managing partner of Appetite Consultancy. The reason I thought I'd ask you to explain a bit more, because you're making the point about technology often being ahead of the ability for people to adapt and change their behavior.
Yeah, I was just interested to hear, the panel talks a lot about incentives. Sorry. The panel talks a lot about incentives.
We can barely see you, by the way, you're in the dark, but we know we can hear your voice.
I don't think it matters very much. I think a lot of people's experience has been that cultures is much harder to shift than people always believe. In terms of kind of the length of time it takes for people to change their behavior and to accept that something is actually beneficial for them. So, does the panel think that incentive is the panacea and will actually solve those this acceptance level? Not just at consumer level, but potentially also authorities and businesses are traditionally very slow to adapt to change and to change their culture.
Companies and also public servants as well, very slow to change and feel comfortable in conformity. All of you, I think, are nodding. Niels.
No, I think it's right, and I would even say, like 5 or 10 years ago, I would probably be sitting here saying that it's good. It's good for countries to have energy policies that are often supported by a lot of parties in government with a big majority, but also having their strategies or legislation that goes forward a long time, because a lot of infrastructure investments into energy, of course, are things that will have to pay back over a long time. Now, whereas that is good, it's kind of also providing exactly the inertia that you're talking about to change. And that, I guess, is where we are right now. And I think the question before on district heating versus gas, we have to make up with some of the decisions we made 20, 30, 40 years ago, where we put infrastructure in and move to some of the new ones. And I think it's important there. And as business, I feel we have a role there in also making public understand what opportunities are actually there. You can say, I think the wind turbine companies have been pretty good in talking about wind turbines, and most people today know what those are and that they're probably good for society. I think we need to do something similar on district energy, on energy efficiency of all kinds that we're talking about, and that is the way to get more speed on that. But it is kind of built into the problem.
Even in a company, a major corporation, do you find it difficult to actually change the culture and behavior so that what might have been expected as an opportunity in 5 years could be seen as an opportunity in 5 months?
Yeah, and I have a good example. Just like we've heard here, also for our factories, I think we have 30 factories around the globe where we are running energy efficiency programs. Now, why is it that it's been difficult for a company like ourselves that live off providing these solutions to get sufficient speed inside our own organization? That's kind of, I think, exactly what we're getting to. That's because our production managers, they are very eager to produce as efficiently as possible. Now we need to get this incentive on their shoulders as well. And
Manuel and Jose Pablo, the resistance inside government to understanding the enormity, but the positives as well coming from this. Jose Pablo, in other words, are you getting resistance among the public servants?
Yes, there is resistance to change naturally, and among public servants, particularly those who have been in public office for a long time, they find it difficult to adapt to new technologies or new ways to responding to society. However, there is one fundamental issue here. The decision and the leadership has to come from the highest level. In our case of Hidalgo, if our governor, Olvera, was not determined to push this initiative and make it visible and put all his political capital behind it, then it would just not go forward. With his leadership, even though there is resistance within the sector, then we can move forward. Now, I don't think incentives are the panacea, but they are certainly necessary and very important to bring about this change that we're talking about.
Manuel, do you have resistance in Portugal?
Not necessarily, but the question is very well framed and call our attention to the process of a transition that we need to evolve towards a more sustainable world and more sustainable cities. And that is a big challenge, which we need to monitor these transition processes every day, every year, and in a continuously way. And it is clear that we need public and private leaders, but we also need a process that's actually Nobel laureate of economics, Edmund Phillips, call it mass flourishing. We need to educate our population at massive levels to better understand this process of changing towards a more sustainable level. And again, the use of technology to leverage that learning process is a key issue which need to be monitored and need to be incentivized, but do require us to better understand the changing process which will need to occur at every day.
I've got a question for Yancy. How do you see a thing like district heating and cooling in a country like Taiwan with megacities? Is it possible in Taipei? Or what is the key obstacle? That from Søren Hila Choi, I hope I got that right, Global Market Director for Rombor.
Okay, the district heating and cooling, I think can be done. Actually, within Delta, we have a team. We are looking at different control system for HVAC, because if say for this stadium, if you want to cool, to warm this building, it's going to have a lot of energies. But if you have sort of segmented into different rooms, and then you can do it. But the controlling system is important. But thanks to the modern technology, the sensors, the controllers, and so forth, it can be done. And we think, because the air conditioning system is the most energy intensive, in the building. It's about 40%. So if we can do that, in the segment fashion, then we can save a lot of energy.
All right, final thought before we close this part, before we move on to sustainable mobility, urban mobility. This from Rodrigo Marquez. It's not only politics. Innovation is not adequately financed. VCs, for instance, have a very short-term horizon of about 2 years. Energy innovation requires much more financial support. Do you accept this kind of limitation on initiatives and innovation? Are you seeing that in the cities and in your state? Are you seeing restrictions?
I agree with the fact that innovation is not adequately financed. The question is, how do we adequately do it? And I agree with Niels in that we have to allow markets to operate efficiently. We see innovation as only completing its cycle when it becomes market efficient. So what we seem to be finding out is that these incentives are the starting spark, and these incubators and entrepreneurial processes are the starting part of the process that needs to go on, sustained by the market. Do we need to find better ways to do more long-term financing? Yes. It has to be teamwork among universities, governments, and also private sector.
And Jake, VCs for innovation, are you seeing finance as a really very serious limiter on this or not?
Well, I just read the OECD entrepreneurship status, and it generally looked at there's an uptick, but financing is still, and there's an uptick in entrepreneurs starting up businesses, and financing is still sort of a challenge. Again, it's a little bit different from country to country as well. You see in some parts of the world where the government is very much behind this and driving this. In other parts, it's more localized and decentralized. So it is necessary. And I think it's going forward. If you want to drive and make some of these companies successful, it's important that a lot more needs to be done.
Right, very quickly if you can, because I'd like to move on to the next session.
Just one comment. In this respect, the world is not flat at all. Actually, even just looking at Europe, we see an enormous divergence emerging more and more in recent years, and after a decade hit by recession and the budget problems. But also at a world level, the differences across different parts of the world are enormous. In Europe, we are also looking over the last 2 years at the tentative or the attempt to funding innovation with new funding formulas, and particularly looking at capital markets. We need to monitor that. We really still don't understand how far we can go from the traditional grants type of public funding to new forms of capital markets financing innovation. And that needs to be monitored.
One last word, Niels, quickly.
Yeah, I think it is important that government supports this, but I would urge then that a lot of that support doesn't necessarily have to be on basic research, but really accelerating the uptake of what is already there, working with people in the government that they understand it. But actually, that I think is worth a lot for entrepreneurs if they can count on this technology getting into market relatively soon. Because if that inertia is way too long, it will kill entrepreneurs starting to get started.
Well, look, can I thank you, all 5 of you, very much, and many of your questions as well, and thanks for those contributing from the floor.